following program is brought to you by your friends at Podcast One.
At Kaiser Permanente, we're always looking into the future, but we're not using a crystal ball. We're using science and technology to see what's coming for your health. Take something preventable, like heart disease. It's the leading cause of death in this country because only half of us manage our blood pressure correctly, so we made it a focus. The result? More than 83% of Kaiser Permanente members have their blood pressure under control. We may not be able to tell you your fortune, but we'll happily work on improving your future. Kaiser Permanente. Together we thrive. Visit kp.org/thrive.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned in to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. Hello, Tim.
Hello.
All right. We've had a chance to speak to some interesting people, to say the least, over the last 13 years.
Oh,
right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
We got a chance to talk to a gentleman who worked for Area 51. We had to cloak his voice, but he told us some interesting and compelling information. We did that a number of years ago. Mm-hmm. We've spoken to the lover of Lee Harvey Oswald. That was crazy, right?
Oh, yes.
We've spoken to experiencers of ghosts, Bigfoot, alien abductions, from Stan Romanek to Whitley Strieber to Travis Walton, and we've heard these first case scenarios. We've talked to some of our favorite guests to talk about these topics and the research and influence that they've had in looking into these cases. And one that's certainly caught the attention of a lot of people are the cases and stories of the Men in Black. And we've had Nick Redfern join us and talk about that and many other guests over the years. And it's been a fascinating aspect of what we do, right? There's this urban legend of these men in black that show up after strange encounters. I don't want to just say it's UFO because there have been visions or visitations by these men in black after many different type of phenomena have taken place. Most it's associated with aliens or UFO sightings, but there's been a wide breadth of stories where people have been visited by these men in black. And I got an interesting email, Tim. I got an email from a gentleman who claims to be a part of the Men in Black. And he's written a book called Just an Urban Legend, True Stories from the Real Men in Black. And I threw him an invitation. I said, would you be interested in coming on the show and talking with us? And he agreed to do so. So this is a first for our program, Tim. Joining us now on air, right here on the program, Jason Brown, author of Just an Urban Legend, True Stories from the Real Men in Black. Jason, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. The Men in Black, this mythos, this strange legend and lore, you're kicking it into the light and telling us this isn't just an urban legend, that there is something and that this is a real group. This is a real faction of life that's taking place.
Yes, that's correct. So it was basically created around the same time as the other three-letter agencies, like CIA and the NSA and whatnot. And that was shortly after the Roswell crash. And so basically it's like, it's run a lot like one of those special access programs, where everything is highly, highly compartmentalized and classified and all that. And, that was like an agency like the NSA, it wasn't even officially acknowledged until 1957, right? Mm-hmm. So, like the Men in Black have been quiet, like even longer than that.
Well, talk to me, if you will. First of all, is Jason Brown your real name?
Yeah, that's correct.
How can you come forward and share this information, Jason, and not fear for your life, for the safety of yours or your family's lives?
Well, I take that as a possibility, but, I just feel that the information should come out because what was happening was It was in fact illegal because I started like basically before I could even walk, which breaks all kinds of, child labor laws and stuff like that.
All right. I'm intrigued. You started before you could even walk. How did you get recruited into a program like this?
Well, it's pretty much classified, but excuse me. Basically, what I remember is basically since I was, really, really tiny, some of the training started. It sounds kind of silly, but we'd play like things like people would come by and we'd play things like, board games and stuff like that, things that were like you could say, I guess a little something you would play when you're a little older, but you're playing it when you're younger, and you're kind of working your brain and, start get your intelligence higher, basically. And and from that point, you basically start with all this like advanced training when you're small, like as years go on, and that involves things like there's combat training, and then there's things like mathematics and physics, and you would study art and play chess, things like that. They wanted to expose you to as many like experiences as possible, so that when you were out and about, like things wouldn't be as surprising to you, and it just kind of makes you smarter, And
so they're engaging your mind at an early age in order to help glean and bring you up. Did your family have ties to these three-letter agencies? Why do you believe you were specifically chosen?
No, there's no family ties. Neither one of my parents were military. However, I had an uncle who worked at Area 51, and that's about all the weird stuff I can think of right now. As far as why I was chosen, I'm not really sure why. There's quite a few people. I guess we were just considered to be high-functioning individuals, and they wanted the best of the best, kind of, because the kind of stuff that we deal with it could be anything, and not necessarily just aliens, but, they wanted somebody who could deal with pretty much any situation out there, including extraterrestrials, or say, a threat from another dimension, or even threats coming through the timeline, time travel.
Okay. You start this early training. At what point do you start to realize that this isn't just what every kid is going through at your age?
That didn't really cross my mind for a really long time, because as I was, I started time traveling when I was really little. Like in my personal case, most of my involvement involved like time travel and that kind of thing. And I was just a real little guy, like 5 years old. And at the time, I didn't really like realize what I was doing was that big of a deal. Sorry for the dog there. She's yelping. But so I would go back in time when I was this little kid, and I would meet these people and see these things, and like Abraham Lincoln or something, and we'd go back in the past, and we would see all this stuff. And at the time, what it felt like is like a field trip for history class, because you're a little kid and you're all about having fun and excitement and all that kind of thing, but you don't really realize the gravity of the situation of what you're seeing. And so I guess it wasn't until later on, I'd say about around my 20s or so, I realized, hey, this is pretty major kind of stuff. And, what can I do with this information? Maybe I should get it out there, because there are quite a few people out there who are actually involved in this too. And one of the things that it deals with is memory compartmentalization, because it's so highly classified, top secret, that what they do is they wipe your memory of like the last 24 hours. It's not quite like the movies where they just pull out a little gadget and they flash it in your face like that. Basically what it is they hook you up to this machine with electrodes, and what it does is it shocks. It's a quick shock, and you forget about the last 24 hours or so of what happened, basically. And so what you do is you spend time in a room, a few minutes, maybe an hour or so, and then you go out and you do, whatever kind of time sortie or, whatever classified mission or whatever you wanted to do, and then you come right back to the room and they give you that shock, and then what you feel like is that you haven't even left that room, and they say, do you remember doing this and that or whatever? And so you just like, what? No, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. You don't even accept it as a possibility, basically.
Well, talk to me about the time travel as a child. What was the method that they used to displace you in time? And was there a project name for the program you were a part of?
If there is, I'm not aware of it. It was just my work involving the Men in Black. As far as like the physics involved and stuff like that, I didn't build the thing, but as far as I know, like they had these things. It was either built into or it was brought onto like a device, and you can put it in a car, you can put it on a plane, you could put it on a school bus. There's a couple times when I was on a school bus and we traveled through time on it, and on a plane you can put it in something like a passenger jet or something like that. It's pretty versatile as far as I know.
And okay, I know you don't know the specifics of the physics, but would it open up a time portal? Would you phase like Star Trek and then just appear in that timeline?
Oh yeah. It opens up something like I call it a gateway, but I guess it's like a wormhole kind of thing, and it's pretty quick. I mean, it's not like all this flashy, special effects like Back to the Future or something like that, but you could be in a car or whatever, and it opens up this gateway, and then you just go through and you're out the other side, and when you come out the other side and you look around, you can't even really tell, really, like, unless you're really, really perceptive. Because, as I'm sure like, not a whole lot changes in just, say, like 1 year, for example, or 5 years. You have a lot of the same kind of cars, driving around, or even 10 years. It's not that huge of a difference. And so you barely even notice it unless you're really paying attention to it.
Well, right, but you said that you visited the time of Abraham Lincoln. I mean, to show up in a bus or a car or a plane would have certainly made yourself noticed. So you would just pass through a portal at that point and enter that timeline?
Yeah, basically. And there was other occasions where, I'm sure you're familiar with the Foo Fighters, basically. They, some of those were time machines that were out observing the war. And there was an occasion where we were out in World War II, basically. And, sorry to disappoint you here, but, like, actual time travel isn't that exciting like an action movie, It's not that, like, flashy, And so we're out in World War II, and we're just kind of hovering there out on the battlefield, and you look out, and there's just not a whole lot going on, And you can see planes flying in formation, like, out in the distance, but, I mean, they're not, like, dogfighting and, going on bombing runs or whatever, and, you see some tanks here and there, and they're just kind of sitting there and stuff like that, and while we were out there, this one time, this tank, it started taking pop shots at us, and it didn't hit us, but it just kind of stopped after a while, because I guess they just, I don't know, they figured they couldn't hit us, or they just didn't want to waste ammo or something like that. But next thing I know, you hear this. We're all sitting in the time machine, and you hear this loud hum coming from the distance, and it's just this like big, and it starts getting louder and louder. And then next thing you know, this massive B-29 Super Fortress comes by us, and as it was flying by, I mean, you could feel like the sound just rattling you to your core. I mean, you could feel it, you could hear it, and it was just like this big, huge, imposing machine. And this one guy that was there, he was like, man, that'll rattle the fillings out of your teeth, I'll tell you what. Because, I don't know, it was just a sight to behold, this massive machine, and we're so close to it. And I'll never forget the Air Force insignia that was on the side of it as it flew by. That was probably the most exciting bit of that particular thing that happened.
Would you feel any kind of effect when you would return to our timeline? Were you physically affected, mentally affected, emotionally affected at all?
No. This particular method of time travel that we were using, it was, it was easy. It was quick. It was easy. You just go in and out. You don't feel anything. It's not like some kind of crazy, like from the Terminator or something where you got to strip naked or have all these weird, like, prerequisites to go through. You just go in, you come back, and everything's fine. There's not a whole lot that's not a whole lot to it, really.
You say this method. Are there multiple methods to time travel?
Yeah, I'm sure there are. See, I think what happened was that the stuff that we were using was, you hear about things like the Philadelphia experiment, going way back, and, possibly even before then, of when this kind of stuff was just getting started, basically, And so I think, when I started was the 80s. So basically, you have all that time from the 30s or 40s or whatever to refine and perfect it. So along this time, I'm pretty sure that, they probably came across different methods of doing it. I've heard, stories of even having nuclear-powered time machines kind of thing. And so I think by the time the 80s got started, it was pretty much refined. And as far as, if you're in a car, you just have this remote. It's kind of like a remote control, and it's got an antenna on it, and it's probably like a rectangular box, and it's got those displays that are in red, those digital numbers on it. You just kind of dial in where you want to go on the keypad on the thing, and it's got an antenna on it, and it just dials you in, and you tell it when and where you want to go, and boom, you're there. It's really easy.
But no nudity. I think you just disappointed Tim. Half the excitement of time travel is being naked. Now you've taken that away from them too.
Yeah, why time travel if you can't strip down and let it all air out?
So you go visit these different times. Was there an objective? Was it just to go and witness and see these points in history? Were you there to alter them? Why would they send you back to these moments?
Yeah, there was various reasons why. One of them, was to witness and to see things. We saw dinosaurs and the World War II and stuff like that. And some of it was actually tourism. Some of the people that we were bringing back, when the MIB first got started, there was a lot of illegal activity because, you can't just charge $200 for a toilet seat or, $100 for a hammer, right? Because it still leaves a paper trail. So a lot of the ways of acquiring this funding was through illegal means. And some of those illegal means were, in fact, unethical. So basically around I have this saying, I always say everything changed in the 80s. There's kind of a turnaround there where they started wanting to acquire the funding through more ethical means. And one of those ethical means was time travel tourism, basically, which is what I saw on the Foo Fighter. And there's, it's basically for rich people right now anyway. And but some of the other stuff I was doing, it was basically escorting people around. Sometimes if a person who wants to travel through time in this tourism wants to be walking around or something like that, then you kind of take a course and you have to get qualified in order to do this first. So one of my jobs while I was out doing this was I would just kind of follow them around and, keep an eye on them, because when you're a kid, you kind of see things in a different light. You notice things that adults don't really notice, right? And this one guy I was with, we were walking around in a war zone during World War II, and so we were just walking along, and he was just, we were just observing all the bombed out buildings and everything, and just kind of checking things out. There wasn't, bullets flying everywhere and all kinds of action and all kinds of stuff like that. But we're just walking around the rubble, and then all of a sudden I see this grenade on the ground, right? And he didn't even notice it. And so I was like, oh, quick, I remember my training. We ducked behind something, and we just sat there for a couple minutes, and then nothing happened. So we got back up, and we went over there and looked back at it, and, it wasn't doing anything. So we're like, oh, well, it must have been a dud. It must have been sitting there for a while. And some of the other things that I was doing was, it was just kind of like keeping an eye on people, basically. Like you would, sometimes you go back with a group, this group of ladies and stuff that they're going around, and you have to remain inconspicuous, basically. Like if you're driving around in a car, you can't be, speeding, weaving around or anything like that. You can't be getting pulled over, that kind of thing. And you have to make sure that you have to kind of keep everybody else in line, kind of watch over them. You have to sort of protect them, kind of like bodyguarding duty. I did a lot of bodyguarding kind of duty where you just kind of follow people around and let them do their thing and make sure they don't create too much ripples, in the time stream, basically.
And you said that you'd go with a group of women?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, that was just.
Was this tourism, or was this an actual? I mean, was there a point to this?
Yeah, it was tourism. One case was with a group of women. We went back to. It was this club in Hollywood or something like that, and it was just kind of going around and checking things out. Kind of sort of think of it like a beta test, basically. Just kind of seeing if it's kind of like workable in order to
wait a minute.
Money up.
Right. So, do you understand how insane this sounds, Jason, right? That, we're going to do it as a beta test. We're going to take some tourists around and give them a chance to visit the past. And, they can go shopping. They can see some of these places that were around, and then we're going to bring them back. Would they bring them back and then wipe the memory after this? Because if that's the case, why would anybody pay to have that happen?
No, they didn't wipe the memory. It was more like kind of like scouting kind of thing, kind of checking it out.
Right, but wouldn't you scout with people that you trust, people that,
yes.
Not just a bunch of rich women that wanted to go see Beverly Hills circa 1981, and to me that just seems kind of absurd.
Yeah, well, no, some of the people that I was going with were actual other MIBs. See, MIB is not all, it says men in black, but it's not all men, basically. And, the term men is kind of like, the term for soldiers, back in the day, like. Right,
or policemen, firemen, it was just a universal title. Didn't necessarily denote the sexuality of the person involved.
Exactly.
The gender,
so, like,
right.
Some of these were, other MIB, who happened to be female. And, but, things in like the Foo Fighter, when you're traveling around in these high danger areas, like say World War II or something like that, then, you'd be up in a craft or, a vehicle so that there's a lot less danger involved there, basically. And, some of the other things that we were doing was, it was, like regarding bodyguarding duty, like somebody would be, some other kind of VIP or something that was, say, important to the timeline, basically. Like if somebody was bothering them or something like that and they couldn't just go to the regular police, we would have to, like say if some kind of event was going to happen or something like that to where, they could get hurt or dead or something like that, then we kind of swoop in and like, make sure that everything is, is fine to preserve the timeline, basically.
Now, when you say you have to go in and protect and do this, were you armed? Did you have the ability, if the need be, to take somebody out if they were interfering or causing problems, or could possibly interrupt the timeline by dealing with the people from the future?
No, not always. Like, the thing about that is that when you go back and you're basically boots on the ground, you can't really bring a whole lot with you. Like, when you can't bring really like cameras or like your smartphone or whatever. So because you have to kind of dress like something that will fit the time period as well. Like, say for example, you throw on some t-shirt and t-shirt and jeans, and you're good for 100 years basically. So you couldn't really bring your ID with you either, because if you're out of your year, first of all, it would look fake as heck, because they won't know what an ID looks like from the present day back in like the 90s or even the 80s for example. And so you kind of just got to use your brain, and you learn to diffuse situations without violence as much as possible, because if you were to have to hurt another person or something like that, that could create further ripples in the time stream. Like say if somebody was coming to hurt another person and that you're trying to protect, basically, that could create other ripples. So you wanted to use your brain to try and diffuse the situation, maybe get them out of there or something to that effect, and create as little of an effect on the timeline as possible without being too noticed and that kind of thing. And if you hear about some of the stories from the Men in Black and that kind of thing, a lot of the things that you hear about is you don't really hear a whole lot about violence and that kind of thing. It's usually like they'll show up, they'll threaten you or something like that, and then the person usually backs down, and they're just gone. So it's not like a whole lot of violence. It's mostly using your brain and trying to diffuse situations and protecting the time stream, basically, or the timeline, I mean.
All right. Were there mistakes made? Have we accidentally altered the timeline from time to time? Is that what's causing this thing known as the Mandela effect?
Well, it's possible. I think that, when you have things like the Mandela effect, that, excuse me, it's probably, there's a change in the timeline or something like that, and the physical world has been changed, but like the memory is still there, basically. And as far as mistakes, well, I think what's happening is that you have alternate futures and stuff like that, possible futures. Some are more probable than others. And, what you want to try and do is to guide it in a way so that without making, too huge of changes, but you want to kind of guide it so that we're not all like, just completely destroyed in like, World War III or something to that effect. And you want to kind of just keep it going along, because, we all heard the stories of, 2012, and, everybody's always saying World War III is imminent, any day now. I mean, people have been saying that since way back in like, the Iraq War days. They're like, oh, this is World War III, it's kicking off, but yet we're all still here. So, it's quite possible that, a lot of this is little subtle tweaks here and there that kind of make it so you have a nice positive, or positive-ish, I mean, compared to where we are now, but at least the timeline to where we're not all like completely destroyed. And if you take a look around, you see that the alternative media kind of thing, with the UFOs and this previously classified material about time travel, it's getting out there more, and it's really it's getting more popular these days. And I think that's the way that it's supposed to go, is a more peaceful future with more information about all this, previously hidden stuff, and some of the illegal activity that went along with this, coming out to light, people getting arrested, justice being served kind of thing, basically.
All right, we've got to take a quick break. You know what's not smart? Job sites that overwhelm you with tons of the wrong resumes. But you know what is smart? ZipRecruiter.com/darkness. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't wait for candidates to find you. ZipRecruiter finds them for you. Its powerful matching technology scans thousands of resumes, identifies people with the right skills, education, and experience for your job, and they actively invite them to apply, so you get qualified candidates fast. No more sorting through the wrong resumes. No more waiting for the right candidates to apply. It's no wonder that ZipRecruiter is rated #1 by employers in the U.S. That rating comes from hiring sites on Trustpilot with over 1,000 reviews. And right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/darkness. That's ZipRecruiter.com/darkness, DARKNESS, ZipRecruiter.com/darkness. ZipRecruiter, it's the smartest way to hire. Here are a few useful tips that you might not be aware of. A coffee filter and just a little bit of olive oil can help clean your interior. Removing excess weight from your car will actually improve your gas mileage, and you can place your key fob to your chin to help increase its range. Weird, right? Well, here's another tip that you also might not know about. TrueCar helps people get used cars. That's right. TrueCar isn't just for buying new cars. With their certified dealer network and nationwide inventory of nearly 1 million used cars, you'll really enjoy pricing on actual inventory and a simpler buying experience, whether you buy new or used. And with TrueCar, users can see what others paid, so they know if they're getting a good deal before they buy. They're also more likely to enjoy a faster buying experience by connecting with TrueCar certified dealers. When you're ready to buy a new or used car, check out TrueCar and enjoy a more confident car buying experience. Some features are not available in all states. All right, just an urban legend, or is there more to this? We're talking about true stories from the real Men in Black by a man in black, Jason Brown, our guest today. Now, Jason, you said when you would go do these objectives, when they would return you, they would wipe memories, and you would have no memory of what happened. How are you recalling all of these things now?
Well, basically the thing about when you compartmentalize a memory, it doesn't actually erase. It's temporary. So, when you're younger and they compartmentalize it. Oh, sorry about the dog there. Dobermans are they're noisy, very vocal. But when you compartmentalize a memory, it's temporary, and so later in life, as you go on, it starts to come back to you basically. So it's not really a permanent memory wipe basically.
All right. Now, that seems dangerous as well. If they're doing this and bandying back and forth in time, exploring these options, and they're not able to wipe your memory, what keeps people like you from exposing this? And why would you feel this is the time for you to step up and share? Aren't you worried about your own safety?
No, not really. I mean, if something was going to happen, it would have happened already. I think that, this kind of stuff, it needs to come out in the public because what was going on, I mean, you're breaking child labor laws and stuff. I was just a little kid, and, doing this stuff. And I mean, not all as a little kid, but I mean, it started when I was, under 18 basically. And, so, I mean, it's legal and it's classified. Some of the, technology that we're using involves things like free energy and stuff like that. And I really think that, that kind of stuff, it really needs to, come out in the open. There's other technology out there like that. There's this machine that could it could kind of I don't know how to put it. It sort of weaves or stitches like a wound back together. Like you could have a completely severed arm, and what it does is it reattaches it and it stitches it all back together with like this nanotechnology. And
okay,
I mean, you have life extension technology and stuff like that. A lot of it gets like suppressed, and because when you have something like a free energy device that can power your house or your car or something like that, it basically, what's stopping somebody from weaponizing it, basically? So, I mean, there's, you got to get some of these people who are involved in this illegal activity, out, off the streets and arrested so we can have, a safer world to where we can use that, this technology without people getting hurt, basically. And I think that technology really needs to come out in the open, and people who are involved in the illegal activity to, face justice, basically.
With that, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear more. But right now, it's time for a brand new adventure, Theater of the Mind. Today's Theater of the Mind comes from the real-life experience of Greg Olson. Terror in the Night. This event occurred sometime in mid-December of 1988 in Bay Cliff, Texas, along Galveston Bay. I worked night shift, and when I got done early, around 4 a.m., sometimes I would want to unwind by getting some extra exercise in. Usually it would be in the form of a bike ride. Well, this night, I really felt like jogging. I lived in a mobile home close to Galveston Bay, approximately 2 miles away. There was a large flood-controlled ditch that ran east to west, right by my mobile home, all the way to the bay. The flood-controlled ditch was about 30 feet wide at the top, about 15 feet wide at the bottom, and about 20 feet deep. The sides of the ditch sloped down at an approximate angle of 45 degrees. It was unpaved, so it was all natural grass in the ditch. When the jogging mood hit me, I would run down my side of the ditch and climb up the other side and jog down its easement all the way to the highway in front of Galveston Bay, and then turn around and jog back. The first 100 yards or so of the easement, there was a subdivision on the far side of the ditch. But once you passed the subdivision, it was just coastal forest land. I've been jogging this path for about 5 years at this time, and also spent a considerable amount of time exploring that forest. I never found any surprises in there. The only thing of note about the forest is that it is surrounded by a local power plant. There was a caliche access road that ran north and south out of the neighborhood on the north side of the ditch and meandered about 5 miles or so to where the power plant was off to the south. While the south side of the ditch was open forest, the north side of the ditch was a modestly populated residential area, a mix of mobile homes and houses all along the north side. As I said, the jogging mood hit me. I wouldn't normally jog this path at night. The reason is that there were a lot of dogs on the north side, and many of them were free range. The dogs would bark and make a lot of noise when me, and sometimes me and my dogs, would jog through there. That didn't bother me, but I never went down here at night because I didn't want the dogs to wake up the neighborhood. I typically would jog through here in late morning so not to do anything annoying to the denizens of this area. This mid-December night, the jogging muse was upon me, and I felt that the path wouldn't be disruptive as the temperature was pretty cold, mid-30s. The late, around 2:30 a.m. I felt between the time and the temperature the dogs would be sleeping pretty soundly, dreaming of chasing cars and whatnot, and never knew I would be there. So I take off jogging, cross the ditch to the south, and then turn east and jog down the ditch easement towards the bay. I think it's a quarter moon. Between the ambient glow of the street and house lights in the north of me and the light from the moon and the stars, there is more than enough light to see by to not worry about tripping over anything. I pass the subdivisions on the south side, start going by the woods behind the subdivision, and then eventually cross the access road that goes off for miles to the power plant. 20 or 30 yards past the access road, I stop dead in my tracks. I can't explain it, but all of a sudden, I feel terrified. I was in my early 20s and wasn't afraid of anything out in the woods. I was shocked that, from nowhere, I started feeling so very afraid. I do a slow 360-degree turn and check all my surroundings. It's a completely still night. No wind. No branches are moving. I see no moving shadows or anything out of the ordinary. There's nothing I can hear, see, or smell to ping my senses with. I angrily tell myself, grow up. You've been out here hundreds of times. There's nothing to be afraid of. Despite my fear, I resume jogging on my path toward the bay. I get another 15 or so yards from where I'm stopped dead in my tracks again by fear. Only the fear is much stronger than before. Again, I do a 360-degree turn and sense nothing. except a dark, dark fear. I check in with all my senses. I try to listen for sounds and begin checking to see if there's any movement. I even tried to sniff in case there was any unusual smells. It is a perfectly still night, but this really wasn't unusual for this time of year or time of night. Again, I tell myself there's nothing there. I try to shake it off and wheel myself forward and resume the jog. This time I get no more than 10 yards, and I'm stopped again by the greatest terror I've ever experienced, and I've been audited by the IRS. Only now, I'm certain that I'm surrounded. I know, without having any sensory evidence, that if retreat was my only option, it no longer was. I can't go forwards, backwards, to my right or my left. Not that I'd want to go to my right, as that would lead me straight into the woods. In my perception of the terror of that moment, I knew I only had seconds to act. I unhesitatingly turn to my left and sprint down the flood-controlled ditch, up the other side of the ditch, and am now in someone's yard that runs by the ditch. I know exactly where I am, as I've jogged this route many times in the daytime. This yard has a full backyard chain-link fence and a large hound-type dog in the backyard. I don't hesitate. I'm running in a straight line as I run up from the ditch and I jump the fence, run through this backyard, jump the other side of the fence, and I'm now running through their front yard. I've made enough noise to rouse the dog whose yard I just ran through. While still running as fast as I can, I hear him make a sleepy bark or two. Then, an alarmed bark. And then he goes full-on DEFCON 1, barking and screaming and screeching, and I can hear his location aspect change. He's barking furiously, in the tone that dogs use when they are the most aggressive. He's also running back and forth on the side of the fence that's parallel to the flood control ditch that I just came from. He's running the length of his backyard, back and forth, furiously barking. While this is happening, I'm still running through a lot of private property that has multiple dogs. From my bike rides through here, I know of at least 5 free-range dogs in these yards that I'm running through, and probably even more. I hear all of the dogs repeat the same process. A couple of sleepy barks, an alarmed bark, then furious barking. But each and every one of them, instead of chasing the fleeing human running through the yard, run towards, but do not cross the flood-controlled ditch. They're all staying on the north side of the ditch, even though I've run through at least 8 yards, most of them having dogs. Not a single dog chased me, even after the first dog literally woke up the neighborhood. I make it to the main street that'll take me back to the street that runs to my yard. As I'm heading back from whence I came, but down the road about 30 yards away, instead of the flood control ditch, I hear every dog along that flood control ditch bark furiously at something on the other side of the ditch. I've heard every dog along the way bark at me and my dogs as we happily went down that ditch during daytime. I've never heard them as riled up as this. Before I get back to my trailer, I hear an owner or two scold their dogs for the racket, and the barking intensity begins to subside. But they're still barking, just not as severely. By the time I get back to my trailer, it's mostly quiet night again, with only an occasional dog bark from whence I came. I collapse on the floor of my trailer. Besides the shock of the terror, I've now sprinted full speed for close to a mile, and at this point, across every uneven terrain before I got back to the roads. My own 2 dogs, sensing my emotional state, converge on me to make sure I'm okay, in that doggy way. They're all certain I need some licks and some jumps to fully recover, and I'm pretty sure they were right. As I started to calm down, I had 2 thoughts. 1, what in the hell just happened? I've been running around at night in wooded areas and near wooded areas for over 10 years by this point. This was not an unknown area for me. I've never been scared in the woods. My second thought, as I'm cavorting with my dogs, is, did their brethren just save me from the terror in the night? My answer then, and still, is an emphatic yes. Every dog in a 7 or 8 block line went off, barking furiously at something on the other side of that ditch. A darkness, something that was trying to stalk me in the night. I have been barked at by all of those dogs while biking and jogging. Their barking pattern and intensity has never been and was never like it was that night. As far as I'm concerned, yes, they did save me from the terror in the night.
Beyond the Darkness listeners, if you like this show, then you need to check out CarCast, because it's the longest running automotive podcast. And if you're anything like Dave and I, and you know a little bit about cars and you need to know more about cars, then CarCast is definitely the podcast you need to check out. CarCast is a twice-weekly automotive show hosted by Adam Carolla, wrestling superstar Bill Goldberg, and Matt the Moderator D'Andrea. It's the only show of its kind that explores all aspects of the automotive space, from the performance aftermarket to new car buying and the future of the automotive industry. The guys answer your questions, they offer advice, and feature guests from the automotive industry and celebrity car enthusiasts. Listen to CarCast with Goldberg and moderator Matt D'Andrea every Wednesday, and Adam Carolla with moderator every Friday on the Podcast One app or iTunes Podcasts.
At Kaiser Permanente, we're always looking into the future, but we're not using a crystal ball. We're using science and technology to see what's coming for your health. Take something preventable, like heart disease. It's the leading cause of death in this country because only half of us manage our blood pressure correctly, so we made it a focus. The result? More than 83% of Kaiser Permanente members have their blood pressure under control. We may not be able to tell you your fortune, but we'll happily work on improving your future. Kaiser Permanente. Together we thrive. Visit kp.org/thrive.
Beyond the darkness.
We're back. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. Today we're taking a journey out into the strange and unusual. True stories from the real men in black. Just an Urban Legend, that's the name of the book. Jason Brown, the author and proclaimed Man in Black. Now, we've heard some of the experiences you had at a younger age. Talk to me, if you will, about your work as one of the Men in Black. What were you sent out to do as you got older?
As I got older, I mean, it was pretty much more of the bodyguarding duty, basically. Just kind of following people around. Most of it involved, like, preserving the timeline, making sure people didn't get hurt, making sure the people that I was, around with, keeping an eye on them, make sure they don't, like, steal anything or talk to the wrong person or that kind of thing. Sorry about the dog. That's pretty much it, basically. It's mostly just keeping an eye on things and making sure everything is good to go, basically. Most of the, the juicy stuff happened when I was younger. One of the things that we did that wasn't time travel related was that we were actually out investigating a UFO. And basically what happened was I was brought out to this army base or a military base, I should say, probably Air Force Base, and they wanted us to investigate a UFO that they got a report of that was hanging out, over the ocean, and it was just kind of sitting there, basically. So I was brought in, and I had two other MIB with me. They were girls, and they were, from what I understand, they were supposed to be like some kind of psychic sensitive or something like that. And so, I had a bunch of, I was a kid, but I had a bunch of this training with like flight simulators and stuff already. So like what they had us do is they had us go out and one of those E-2 Hawkeye, are you familiar with that aircraft?
I'm not, no.
Oh, you ever seen one of those? It's got two engines on it with propellers, and it's got this big, like, it looks almost like a UFO on top.
Right,
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, well, this thing was decked out with all kinds of, like, sensitive, like, equipment on it for, just detecting signals, radio signals. It had microphones on it on the outside as well. And it had I don't even know what was all on it. They had me fly the dang thing, and I was just this little kid, and I'm like, what? why don't one of you guys, fly this thing? And they're like, well, with all your training, you're probably the best pilot here. So I was like, okay, whatever. And, I was just this little guy, and I couldn't even, I had to stand on the seat in order to see, basically. So as we were taking off the runway, we were I was flying by instrument, basically, until we got out to the UFO that was hanging out there over the ocean. And, if you're ever seen the Flight of the Navigator movie, where they have that almond-shaped UFO, basically.
Right.
Yeah. It looked exactly like that. And so, as we got to it, I was standing on the seat, and they wanted us to fly as close to it as possible. And what you did was you would fly basically closer and closer around a circle, try not to spook it, And they had some other people on board, they were going through all the radio, the radio spectrum and everything, looking for signals and stuff like that, and it just wasn't doing anything. And underneath the wings of this E2 Hawkeye, they had something, I don't know what to call it. I call it sticky chaff or something like that. It was basically like this orange paint that you would fly over something and you would spray it. It was like blaze orange paint, when you want to really see something in case it cloaks, basically. And so we flew over that thing and we sprayed it with that paint so it couldn't cloak and disappear. And that's basically when it took off after that. And that was pretty much it. Sorry, it's not, some huge firefight or something like that, but it was, I don't know, I thought that was pretty interesting. It's not every little thing that we dealt with is time travel, but in my case, a lot of it was.
All right. So this, I'm guessing, multi-billion-dollar endeavor, and they just trust a child who can't even see over the steering wheel to take control of this and fly.
Yeah, well, see, it wasn't just me by myself. There was this guy that was there. He was wearing a bomber jacket, and he had a partner with him, this woman. She was in a long trench coat, basically. And he, the guy that was there, he was standing right behind me, making sure, everything was okay. He was, I'm sure he was trained to fly the aircraft if need be. But I can't say why they had me doing this kind of thing. It sounds pretty crazy even to me, but that's the way it happened, basically.
All right. I'm trying to phrase these questions as respectfully as I can, because from the outside, you're coming forward to open up and share some of this information that you feel should be told to the general public. But you understand how absurd and ludicrous this entire story sounds, right?
Oh, yeah, I do. It doesn't, using kids and having, them work with all this classified technology, it doesn't really sound believable. But hey, a lot of stuff out there really isn't. But I know what I saw. It was you have that other guy, Andy Basiago. He was there having him, doing time travel stuff, when he was a kid back in the 70s or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. And so, it's not really a new thing, I guess, in this type of subject matter of using, kids to do this. But I guess what the way they saw it is when you start at a young age that you see things differently and you notice things other people didn't notice. And it was also a little bit of kind of being inconspicuous. You're not like some shady kind of character or whatever. Nobody's expecting it to come from a kid, basically. That the kid is out there watching things and stuff like that, basically.
Is it because a kid is going to be much less conspicuous that they go with these kids to do what they're doing?
It's not entirely about being less conspicuous. It's because you start with your training at such a young age that you have a more of a skill set by the time you're, a little older, even at 5 years old or something like that, or older. So, I mean, by the time you are an actual adult, then you should be able to handle yourself then better than somebody who was, say, some 18, 20-year-old kid who just joined the military and only has 2 years of training, basically. So when you start them young like that, you can get surprisingly competent at a younger age than if you were to start later in life, basically. That was the idea behind it.
How long were you a member of this organization?
I still am pretty much. Basically, I haven't been doing a whole lot of time traveling lately, but I've kind of taken on a different role. I guess my role now is to basically get this kind of information out there, because it's I heard somebody say that it would take something short of an act of God to get things like disclosure and these kind of highly classified agencies and programs out into the open. So that's basically what I'm doing now. And
so do you get a chance, like if you went to them and say, hey, I'd like to time travel to this date and this specific time, is that something that they would allow, or does it always have to be on their agenda, what their plan is?
Oh, it's always on their agenda. You don't know when or where you're going. I mean, as I was saying, you didn't really see it as that big of a deal or what was happening back then, but you just kind of, you go and do it, and then you come back, and then they just kind of put you back and, send you on your way, and, that's pretty much it.
But if you came to them and said, hey, I'd like to be there on the day my grandmother passed, they wouldn't allow you that, afford you that opportunity?
No, not at this particular time. As you're saying, on their terms, basically, because it's under such high security and high classification that you can't just go and say, hey, I want to go there, here or there or something like that.
But yet they're getting it ready for tourism, though.
Yeah,
people are stupid. They have to know that making this a tourist thing is only going to cause all kinds of ripples in the timeline, right? Have they done away with that concept, or is it something they're still examining?
It's still examining. Excuse me. Basically, part of my job was to kind of follow around and see how it could work, basically, make sure that people don't go around, making too big of waves, like you could, go see like in the Foo Fighter, basically. We already had reports of the Foo Fighters that were out there during World War II. So if you show up in a time machine out there, they're like, oh, it's just a Foo Fighter, and you can just kind of examine, say you were there and see what happened and stuff like that without, making too big of waves. So it's that kind of thing where you have to because you can't bring money back with you either. If you bring money back with you, you spend it at a store. Next thing you know, that store has more money than it should have had, and maybe it buys more inventory than it had or should have had or something like that. Next thing you know, it creates a ripple effect, and the mess gets bigger and bigger. So when you, excuse me, when you go back and do that kind of thing, you have to create as little waves as possible while, still going there and doing what you came to do, whether it be some kind of bodyguarding duty or, this other kind of stuff, because if somebody gets hurt, you're trying to protect somebody, and you don't want to hurt the other person too much. You just want to get the person that you're watching over out of there or something like that, to kind of diffuse the situation so that it doesn't create a bigger mess in the long run.
Right. That part I understand, trying to, maintain the integrity. But I would think that even just being there would upset the balance of nature, because you don't know who you might bump into that would upset their daily schedule, even by a few moments, and, may cause them to get struck by a car or miss that chance meeting with the person that might become their wife or husband or coworker or best friend. So there's got to be a way that, doing what's going on, I would assume it's near impossible to actually police it to any kind of marketable or marked degree.
Well, from what I understand, it's there's certain aspects of it too that are pretty precise, but generally speaking, it's not as that kind of stifling as you want to think that it is. You know, if somebody is 1 second late from for their appointment or something like that, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, and maybe if they even miss that appointment or something, they can still reschedule and life goes on. It's not like some huge fracture in the timeline, but if you have people that get hurt or seriously hurt or killed or something like that, then yeah, that can create a bigger ripple effect. Or spending money and a few dollars at a store when you're back in time or something doesn't sound like a big deal, but you still want to kind of avoid that and make as little ways as possible while you're out there doing it, so that you don't have to worry about it coming back to bite you later, because you just never know. But it's not as stifling as you think it really would be. But at the same time, you can make subtle little changes here and there that aren't big, huge, major events or something like that kind of steer the timeline and preserve it in a certain way to keep everything intact, so that we don't all just the universe doesn't just break and blink out of existence or something like that.
We'll return to this madness in just a moment, and I need to know about aliens, UFOs. Have you personally had contact with them, and what are they doing? How many races do we know about? We'll cover that in just a minute. But first, Pluto TV is the leading free streaming television service. Now you can watch over 100 TV channels and thousands of movies on demand, all for free. No credit card needed, no sign up. Pluto TV is easy and completely legal way for you to watch your favorite TV shows and hit movies. What are you waiting for? Never pay for TV again. Download Pluto TV for free on all of your favorite devices today. On your phone, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, smart TVs, PlayStations, anywhere you can stream. Get it for yourself and cut out the middleman. Pluto TV. It's available and it's streaming right now. Hey, Tim.
Yes.
We've been talking about Loot Crate. I just ordered my first Loot Fright crate. It's a mystery crate, subscription pack, full of horror items featuring scary movie franchises, characters, and more. And right now they're doing a kind of a winter wonderland of terror set. I think it's going to have Lovecraft stuff, Krampus, and more. So I'm looking forward to getting that kit. And we both had a lot of good luck with the Loot Crates and some of the mystery boxes of getting some amazing, cool, nerdy product. And I love this stuff. One of my favorite ones we just got was the Alien box. I've got an Alien lapel pin. I've got a Venom t-shirt. I've got a Predator headband. I've got some really cool loot that came in the set and a cool collection. And if you're a Star Trek nerd or Harry Potter fan, and I shouldn't keep throwing out the nerd, but I wear it proudly. They've got something for everybody. They've got the regular Loot Crate. They've got the Loot Crate DX, which is a premium crate experience. There's Loot Wear, which is apparel and accessories featuring your favorite TV shows, movies, games, and pop culture franchises. They've got the Loot Remix, which is a surprise mix of past Loot Crate collectibles and gear. And that's delivered to your door every month for just $14.99. If you're more into gaming, they've got Loot Gaming, Loot Anime, Loot Fright, Halo, WWE, Slam Crate, Firefly, Loot Crate, Marvel as well, with Marvel gear and goods. They've got literally everything for anybody. If you're into this stuff, Loot Crate is your answer. What's Loot Crate, you ask? It's a monthly subscription box delivered directly to your door with exclusive pop culture collectibles, apparel, and gear. Loot Crate curates, designs everything themselves, so you can't find these items anywhere else. No matter what you geek out about, this is it. This is the place for you. They've got over 30 million crates that have been sold. And their original and most popular Loot Crate is curated collections of items from only the best pop culture franchises every month. And we're talking the real deal with likes of DC, Marvel, Blizzard, Harry Potter, Nickelodeon, WWE, Fallout, and many, many more. There's a guaranteed t-shirt in every crate, and the Loot Crate packs $45 plus of value into each crate for less than $20 a month. I mean, you can't lose. Loot Crate also offers 16 other awesome crates, from gaming to anime, including their next most popular crate. Now, subscribe and give yourself a birthday present every month. And this is my month for birthdays, Tim. November 22nd, I turn 30 for the 21st time, Tim. and I'm very excited about it. I'm going to treat myself to the Fright Crate this month, and the crates are going to sell out. All right, you've got to order this week to guarantee yours as well before they sell out. Get the best surprises each month from the largest geek and gaming subscription company. Geek out in style with Loot Crate. Subscribers also automatically enter to win each month's Mega Crate, a special prize that looters can win just by being a looter. Head on over to lootcrate.com and see this month's Mega Crate prize for yourself. Subscribe now by going to lootcrate.com/darkness. LOOTCRATE.com/darkness and enter my code DARKNESS to save an exclusive 30% off your subscription. Again, go to lootcrate.com/darkness and then enter my code DARKNESS, DARKNESS, to save an exclusive 30% off your subscription. There's no need to wait. Get the coolest items delivered to you right now by joining up with lootcrate.com/darkness and enter that code DARKNESS to save an exclusive 30% off your subscriptions. All right, now talking about your work as a person involved in the Men in Black, Jason, and the book is called Just an Urban Legend: True Stories from the Real Men in Black. Is this book out and available nationwide right now?
Yeah, it's on Amazon right now. That's about it at this point.
Okay, we'll include a link to that for this. Now, talk to me about aliens and UFOs having access to this. Can you confirm or deny the existence of extraterrestrial life visiting our planet?
Yeah, I can most certainly confirm it. There's definitely something out there. There's not a whole lot more I can say about that, but yeah, it's not really as.
Have you met an alien in person?
Yeah, I have.
On more than one occasion?
Correct.
All right. And are there many different races, or is it really only one or two that are visiting our planet on the regular?
I don't have all the details on that, but I can say is that there are quite a few different races that are out there.
How many have you personally encountered?
Well, I'm actually not sure. There's some out there that look, they look exactly like humans and stuff like that. So you could be walking by one and just not even or talk to one and not even know it. But my focus wasn't really on, that kind of thing. So I don't have a whole lot of detail I could give you on that, really.
All right. And what about alien craft? Have you seen or been aboard any?
Well, the thing about that, the UFO that we were investigating, the only thing that we can glean from it was that they were the two girls that were with us that said that were supposedly psychically sensitive. They just said that they didn't detect any danger and that they were just looking around. As far as whether they're human or not, I mean, you look at a UFO and stuff like that, and you don't know who's aboard, really. You know what I mean? So if it was an actual alien ship, you wouldn't call it a UFO. You would call it an IAC for an identified alien craft because you know it's alien. So as far as that goes, I mean, that's about it,
Why all the secrecy regarding ET and alien, especially in 2018 when polls are telling you that more than half the population already believes in it? Everybody seems prepared and ready to make that connection. Why would the government continue to hide this from us?
Well, from what I understand, from my work, is that a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of the UFOs were not actual aliens, but quite a few of them were actually time machines. And the other thing about that is that a lot of the stuff that is going on is highly, highly illegal. The acquiring of funding is illegal in a lot of cases, and it's through ethical or non-ethical means. Some of it is, and also people who are under 18, putting them to work, that's highly illegal too. And that's a huge part of all of this, is that you have all this illicit activity where a lot of people are going to go to jail and go into prison and stuff like that over keeping the secret and all the details all the things that went on behind the scenes regarding all this. And so they're basically, what's happening is they're all trying to stay out of prison. That's as far as I understand it, is they're trying to save their own skin as opposed to, doing the right thing and getting, this information and technology out of there that we can, help the planet as opposed to, keep burning, oil and stuff like that and polluting it. That's my understanding of the situation.
But yet they're not kicking in your door and putting a bullet in your head to stop you from giving this information. If they were so concerned and worried about it, how are you doing this interview? Why aren't they pounding on my door or Tim's door to stop it?
Well, as far as the way I see it, is it sounds so just completely insane and just like improbable and just, it just sounds crazy. So like they figure that, probably even to other conspiracy theorists out there who read about this kind of stuff would just be like, oh, that's just crazy. I mean, so I don't think they're just that worried about it, really, at least at this point in time. It's just, the improbability of it I think is why it doesn't seem to matter, why I wasn't, just taken out a long time ago or something before I could even utter a word. I think that's the reason behind it, or a big reason behind it.
Just an urban legend, true stories from the real Men in Black. Jason Brown, thank you for stopping in and sharing your story with us today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Have a good one. I don't know, Tim. I got to be honest with you. I mean, I was intrigued, and the book is interesting. Mm-hmm. And going through some of the chapters, the way it's written, I don't believe a word he said. Not one word, but maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why they let people like Jason Brown write these books, is because, as he stated, it is so far out there that even those of us predisposed to believe have a hard time believing in this. Now, why is it that I can listen to somebody like Andrew Basiago and actually begin to buy into the scenario? Well, but then I hear something like Jason's story and I feel so disconnected and as though this isn't, that there's absolutely no genuine aspect to anything that he said. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to him. I'm trying to understand it.
I think there's a bit of a credibility factor. I think with Andrew Basiago, you get a guy who is a lawyer. You get a guy who is very well spoken. And when he attacks the subject, he comes at it with an air of credibility. And when he puts his story together, it's so well formed and so well delivered that you can't help but be sucked in. And he kind of takes you on that trip, and it's so well delivered that you just go, yeah, it's so well sold that you go, yeah, it has to be this. It's so well spun that of course it has to be true. And when you listen to Jason's story, you go, well, I don't know, maybe he's lived through it, but maybe the way he delivers it doesn't sound as credible. And it's that credibility factor, I think, when someone tells their story as opposed to when it's written on the page, it may or may not ring true with you. Now, somebody may have just listened to this interview and said, you know what, I feel like that experience may ring true with me, or it may not ring true with me. It just depends on the individual who's listened to the interview.
Let's examine the what ifs. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Here would be my first concept. I mean, again, when you hear a guy like this talking and sharing the story, he doesn't come off as well-spoken, as very well-educated for a man who, and again, I'm not putting him down or trying to judge, but I'm just saying, if you're going to choose the best of the best to go forward, mm-hmm. he just doesn't seem to fit that concept for me.
But even he stated that they did take kids from a young age and use them. Even so, you might question the education factor there. If you're taking children from a young age out of their environment and use them, if he was taken from a young age, maybe the education factor isn't there because you're being taken out of school, you're being taken from classes.
Well, that's what I was going to say in this point is I wonder if it's not the best of the best. I wonder if it's the middling, if it's the people like you and I and Jason that they would choose to do this with, because they would be unbelievable. You get a guy like Andrew Basiago who's smooth and polished around the edges when he, delivers his stories and explanations. He layers. He not layers. What the hell is layers? He kind of lends this air of credibility to the story. Mm-hmm. And I know there are people rolling their eyes going, Schrader, how can you believe the nonsense Basiago puts out there? I don't know that I believe it, but I am fascinated by the man, and I'm fascinated by why he believes that what he's telling us is the truth. I'm also not dismissing him. Of everybody we've ever spoken to, Andrew Basiago comes off to me as the most believable because of the absurdity factor, but how well versed he is in it.
Right. Yeah.
And I with that said, that also puts me on the hook with all of these false flagger loons that will sound insanely credible about some of the prospects and aspects of these things that have taken place. And I don't want to go into them specifically again, but some of them can make a compelling argument based completely on shifting sands. Mm-hmm. So, you can have people that are extremely good at speaking. You can have your Charles Mansons, your David Koreshes, right? Your Reverend Jim Jones, who are speaking on a platform of insanity, but you get the right mix of people looking for belonging and they'll join into the fray. But I wonder if by taking people, that are more middle class, like a Jason Brown, and put him into the scenario. Here you've got somebody who's going to seem not polished and out of place if you put him into a timeline, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to have somebody who is not necessarily overthinking or what's the proper word I'm looking for here? They're not going to stand out as much. And having somebody who maybe isn't on the higher scale of legitimacy, you can control them easier. You can control the scenario easier. And if it goes tits up on you, it's a Mission Impossible deal that, if you're caught, will disavow any knowledge of you.
Not only that, but it's easy to discredit them as well.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's real easy to just walk away and say, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you believe in any part of the story, you're nuts.
Yeah.
So, it's just, and again, I'm not dismissing summarily Jason Brown. There's enough weirdness in the fact that he's telling the story and who he is that makes my spidey sense tingle on the BS meter at an extremely high rate. But there's also the fact that I just find it fascinating that he believes this is true and that he believes that he's had these experiences. And I didn't get the sense from him that he was just blowing smoke to blow smoke. I believe he's telling a truth in his world. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure. Again, I don't want to be disrespectful. He's not here to validate for himself, but I also didn't want him to feel like he's under attack.
Right.
By having this discussion. This is something I wanted you and I to chat with and have our listeners weigh in. And feel free to email me or hit us up on social media on today's program and let me know what your thoughts are on this. Is it just nuts enough that it's probably true? Is he just unbelievable enough to be believed? Because what he's talking about is so absurd. If you heard it from anybody else, would it maybe start to cause some friction among the three-letter agencies and around the black ops organizations? Because you wouldn't want that person to have the legitimacy, But again, it says something to me that during the show we didn't hear on our door, right?
Yeah.
And nothing stopped us from posting today's show.
No. Although
there was at one moment while we were talking to him, somebody started beating on his door. I did get that momentary feel of, oh, no.
Yeah.
But it turned out it was just his dad stopping by.
That was a little alarming. Although, interestingly enough, in past shows when we've had interruptions in the broadcast or something has happened that's been kind of kismet or fate or whatever you want to call it, or bizarre sequences or consequences as a result of the subject we're talking about, that's led a little bit of credence as to the subject that we're talking about. And we have had incidents before when we've talked about Area 51 or we've talked about aliens or ghosts or something where we've had interference in the line or we've had some weird something or another happen in the line. And it's led a little bit of weight to the subject in which we're talking about. And in this felt like it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like we were dealing with a weightier subject or like there was any persecution behind him or what he was doing. It was like, oh yeah, they let me go and it was no big deal, or and
that he's still a part of the program and allowed to write a book.
Yeah,
that I don't know.
That doesn't ring true to me.
But it does if you buy into the whole Disinformation Act, right?
Yeah.
But of course they're going to let him do it because that'll make it sound even more unbelievable. Yeah, let a couple of people go forward and share this. It's crazy. Once people hear the story even more, they're not going to believe it, which may be hiding in plain sight. They may be crazy as a fox in that sense. I guess we'll never really know. If there are other people out there from shadow agencies that would like to come forward, we can protect your anonymity. And we'd love to have you on the show in the future to talk about these things. But if you have insights and you want to share them with us, come forward. If you have insights on our guest today, good, bad, or ugly, let us know. Dave@darknessradio.com. That's it for this week, Tim.
Okay.
We're done.
All right.
But we'll be back again next week with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. And remember to join me Monday through Friday on Midnight in the Desert. You can join me Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to midnight Pacific. That's 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Mountain Time. That's 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Central. And for those of you on the East Coast, what the hell are you still doing up that late? It's 12 a.m. till 3 a.m. And you can tune into the best in anomalous talk radio 5 nights a week. You can also subscribe by visiting midnightinthedesert.com. And if you haven't checked out our new website and design, go check it out right now. Darknessradio.com is up and better than ever. Easy to get through. Check out our events. Check out upcoming programs. You can check out our episodes and much more just by visiting darknessradio.com. All right, Tim, have a great week, and I'll talk to you again next week, sir.
Sounds good.
Be safe, everyone. We'll see you again right here on Beyond the Darkness.
At Kaiser Permanente, we're always looking into the future, but we're not using a crystal ball. We're using science and technology to see what's coming for your health. Take something preventable, like heart disease. It's the leading cause of death in this country because only half of us manage our blood pressure correctly, so we made it a focus. The result? More than 83% of Kaiser Permanente members have their blood pressure under control. We may not be able to tell you your fortune, but we'll happily work on improving your future. Kaiser Permanente. Together we thrive. Visit kp.org/thrive.
9 deaths and thousands of homes. I'm Jackie Quinn with an AP News Minute. Fire officials still battling flames in Butte County in Northern California say 9 victims have been found dead after yesterday's devastating wildfire in the town of Paradise. As for the number of people now homeless,
our current residential structures destroyed are 6,453. 6453.
Dozens of homes in Southern California as well have been lost to wildfires. President Trump is blasting critics who are criticizing his selection of Matthew Whitaker to head the Justice Department since Whitaker